I think you've got to be critical and you've got to be a little bit skeptical. If you take everything at face value, then what's the point?
Today on That Car Show, it's Colin Clark. And if you follow Rally at all, you know his name and you know his voice. From his beginnings sponsoring the famed 555 Subaru World Rally team and Rally's larger-than-life personalities, to his work now with Dirtfish and the sport's exciting resurgence in the United States, we covered all. And if, like me, you don't know the first thing about Rally, that's okay too, because Colin's just a hell of a nice guy, and his enthusiasm for the sport will turn you into a fan by the end of the episode. It's Colin Clark, the voice of Rally, and it's That Car Show.
Welcome to this week's episode of That Car Show, and we have a bit of a special one around motorsport. I'm joined, as usual, with Ryan. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, it's good to see you.
This week, Ryan, I am going to give you an education on rallying, and I've brought a subject matter expert to come and help me do that. Before we talk to Colin, let's do a quick introduction. If you followed modern rallying, I said that again. It's a good job we record, isn't it? If you follow more. I can't say the word modern.
I have these moments, Dan. I have these moments. It's fine.
At some point, I might just say, introduce yourself, Colin, but let's do you right. If you follow modern rallying, you've heard his voice. Our guest today is one of the most recognizable voices in the sport. Rally commentator, journalist, and lifelong car obsessive Colin Clark. Colin has covered the highs, the heartbreaks, the politics, and the personalities of rallying at the highest level. He's interviewed world champions after victory, he's navigated on unpredictable service parks, and he's brought fans closer to the sport. Colin, welcome to the show.
Oh, wow. Well, I've never had an introduction quite like that, Dan. That was magnificent. Thank you very much for inviting me on your show. Just one point, Dan. Journalist. I think maybe you're pushing it a bit far, describing me as a journalist. But it was a lovely intro. Thank you very much.
Have you seen those LinkedIn posts that say what you did and then what you put on LinkedIn? So it's almost like I made a cup of tea, but in essence, I conducted a scientific experiment where I boiled water to a point and then applied a third-party material to that water to create. So anyway, we're available for any intros if you ever need us, Colin.
Yeah, well done. I love that. No, I just always feel guilty. I mean, a journalist is I get called a journalist a lot, but, I'm not a journalist. You train to be a journalist, and journalists have particular skills. My biggest skill is that I've always got an opinion. and I'm not sure that qualifies me as a journalist.
That's the most important part. Yeah.
Right. You don't want to hear from folks that don't have an opinion, do you? So, and your opinion is created by a set of experiences and a set of research. So I think you are a journalist.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I guess, I'm quite fortunate in that my experiences in rallying, certainly from the media side of things, cover both sides. I started off in rallying on the other side as a sponsor. I was in charge of the 555 sponsorship of the Subaru World Rally team in its second iteration in the early 2000s. So I've kind of seen it from both sides. I've seen it from the sponsor side, and I've seen it from obviously the media side, the presenter, the commentator, the inverted commas journalistic side of it. I've seen as well. So yeah, I guess it is a reasonably unique set of experiences that I have in it, and I always think it does qualify me to comment on what's going on in the sport.
Yeah. Very much so. Now, Ryan, I know we were talking about the word rally, and it gets used in so many different ways, doesn't it?
It does.
So, Colin, how would you describe, I guess, what I would call the noble sport of rally?
Rallying is the purest form of motorsport in my books. These are cars that you can more or less buy in the showroom on the Monday morning. Okay, there's the argument with the space frames at the very highest level. We've moved away from that. But we're on proper roads where we don't have armcos, we don't have sand traps, we don't have runoffs. It is man and machine against the elements, the roads. And I think that is the absolute purest form of motorsport. When we see road racing on motorbikes, well, it doesn't really get much more real for bikes. Well, this is the same thing, I suppose, for cars. And do you know what? This is the interesting thing for me, Ryan, is you're a big, obviously, motoring person. You're deeply involved in cars and in motorsport. And I wonder why rallying has struggled to take off in America. Because for me, it's so well suited for the Americans. There's adventure, there's excitement, there's drama, there's big cars with big engines, there's jeopardy, there's everything you could want, as an American kind of motorsport fan. But it struggles to get any traction. I wonder why that is, Ryan.
I don't know, because it is great racing and there's a little bit of everything. And I think the level of skill is arguably much higher than other forms of racing. And I think it's so social media friendly too, right? I mean, it's made for like 2026, right? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we have a spoil of riches here in the States, right? And
you know what? Yeah. But you've absolutely hit it on the head with the social media friendly side of things. And I'm sure we'll get onto this as we talk a bit further. But there's a lot of discussion, a lot of debate, a lot of a lot of controversy over the promotion of the sport just now, and we're just in the process of changing promoters. And for a sport that is so ripe for the picking when it comes to social media, we let ourselves down badly, and and that comes from the very top. We, a company I work for, Dirtfish, we do a fantastic job of it. But the sport itself, the promoter, the WRC, needs to be doing a whole load more than they are doing. And it was who was the last guy, the English guy that ran the FIA a few years ago? Help me out, Dan. A lot of controversy around him when he got caught in a slightly compromising position. What was his name at the FIA?
Not Mosley, Max Mosley?
Max Mosley. And whether or not you agreed with a lot that Max Mosley did or said, he was quite an intelligent guy who understood motorsport. And one of the last things he said before he retired was, and this is, 15 years ago, I guess, Dan, that he retired? Must be 15, maybe more than that now, 15, 18 years ago. He said, in terms of all the assets that the FIA have, all the championships that they cover, he said rallying is positioned perfectly to take advantage of, and he was a bit of a visionary, to take advantage of this explosion in social media. Now, social media was hardly a thing. Well, it was, but not such a big thing 15, 18 years ago. But Max Mosley recognized that. And we've let ourselves down. As a sport, we have let ourselves down. And it's a shame, because we could have been, I suspect, a lot more popular in places like the States and other parts of the world if we'd actually jumped on that social media explosion and exploited it.
The thing I don't get is the elements that have originated in rally have made it big in the US. So you look at the Gymkhana series, for example, originally with Ken Block and obviously more recently with Travis. And the skills that they are using have originated from their rally skills. But they get multi-million views. But the rally piece just doesn't seem to get picked up.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you a story. Which, looking back, seems almost unbelievable. But it's why the current promoter has been so widely castigated for their lack of vision, their lack of ability. Ken Block, a man that I watched for many, many years. He competed in the World Rally Championship regularly. And I remember when he first appeared with Travis, 2006, 2007, they were doing the second level, if you like, and then Ken progressed into the top level. But Ken, at that point, I remember going to Mexico, and you couldn't move when Ken and Travis were around. They were absolute superstars. Forget Sebastian Loeb as it was at the time, and Peter Solberg and the top names in rallying. They could quite happily walk through the streets of Mexico. Ken Block, Travis Pastrana, it was the closest thing to adulation that I've ever seen. It was incredible. There were huge names around the world in the early days of social media. And Ken went, when he progressed to the highest level of the sport, he could see there were issues. And he went to the promoter and offered his services. He said, I can help you with this, guys. Maybe one of the most... Remember, Ken was an older guy. He wasn't one of these young upstarts that kind of, the young kids basically affiliated with it. Ken was a bit older. He understood these things. And he said, I can help you with this. And he said, thanks very much. No thanks.
Really?
I mean, it's just inconceivable to think that anyone would turn down Ken Block with all his ability to understand social media, to harness all of the potential of it, And this is when, Gymkhana was already a big success. That's just an indication of where we've stuffed up along the way, sadly. But we're looking for a brighter future, and I think it's there. The great thing is that rallying has all of those assets you need to be successful in a modern media environment. It's got all the assets, and we're just waiting for someone to come along and say, this is how you exploit it.
Yeah. You take someone off, take an alien off a UFO and put them down and show them, I don't know, NASCAR and show them rally. And they're going to go rally every time, right? I mean, the product is superior. I mean, truly, right? You've got all the elements.
It is. And it's the product is superior, I think. And I think the drivers, as you already mentioned, are superior as well. There's another great story about Ayrton Senna. No, it wasn't Ayrton. It was Michael Schumacher. Okay. Michael Schumacher, who had a home in Sweden, very close to where Subaru were testing for Rally Sweden, middle of winter. And Schumacher turned up at the test. Schumacher turned up. He was the Subaru World Rally team. Peter Solberg was testing, and Schumacher just came along. He heard there was a test. So they got him in the car with Peter, and they had a few runs. And apparently Michael got out of the car and said, there is no way in the world that I could do what you are doing.
Really?
He said, but I fully suspect that you can do what I'm doing. Oh. That's what he said to Peter Solberg.
Wow.
So from maybe the greatest Formula One driver that there's ever been, it shows the level of kind of appreciation that these guys have of what the rally drivers are doing. But yeah, it is odd. But do you know, I think it's such a cultural thing with the States. You guys love social occasions, quite clearly, and you love sporting social occasions. Yeah. And something like NASCAR or any of your big roundy races, it just offers a great social sporting occasion, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Rallying is a little bit different. It's more adventurous. It's more smaller groups. You've got to get out into the forest, and you're always on the move. You're always chasing the cars. Mm-hmm. Remember, Dan, that event we did, always chasing the cars around the countryside. It's not such I'm not saying it's not social, because it is social. The weekend in Sweden, I was in a spectator area, and there was so much fun being had there. It was nuts. But maybe not quite the sort of social environment that American motorsport fans are looking for. But I think you can learn, Ryan. I think you can learn. I think we can teach you, and we can help you learn.
Well, I'm an individualist. I mean, this is appealing to me. I don't really want to go sit in a big stadium, under the baking sun and drink, 23 Bud Lights. I mean, that's just not really me. I mean, something like this really appeals. Being in Colorado, started going to the Pikes Peak, race every year, the hill climb rather is what they say. And it's very much, I think, what the rally experience must be like, in that, you're one place, you see one car go by, and then you do a little hike, and then you find a new corner or something, and you're in the woods, and it's great. And it's, so you don't have a food truck, 50 feet away or whatever, but it's an adventure, to your point. And that you're stuck there until the race is done. It's kind of great. Dan had a good time.
I had a great time.
It was fun. It was fun. We got up way too early, but other than that, it was a very good experience. But
did you get to the top though? Did you get right to the top of the mountain? Because that's an effort.
Occasion. No, but done it before. But on that occasion, we stayed at the bottom because you could get access to the service park. You could actually talk to the drivers. We had press passes, so we then hiked up and we were able to take photographs on corners and stuff. But not right to the top. But it was an interesting year. It was 2 years ago, and it was a long day. So the drivers that got up there, so is it Danny Sandano? He's a WRC driver.
Danny Sordo. Danny Sordo. Yeah, he was there in the Hyundai, was he?
So he was complaining because he was stuck up there for like 9 hours. I spoke to him briefly at Goodwood afterwards, and he was like, I was there for 9 hours at the top, and there was nothing to do. But the actual spectating of watching it is awesome. Yeah, you need to come and cover that one, Cole.
Yeah.
No, I do. I absolutely do. And I've talked to various people that have done it, and they all say the same thing. It's just one of the world's great motorsport challenges. When you talk to Michelle Mouton about it, and she'll tell you some great stories about Pikes Peak, about how the Americans, because didn't she win it and she was disqualified or something?
She had
There's
all
some,
the
there's
odds
some
against her,
controversy.
Yeah.
And I think it was 40 years ago last year.
Yeah.
But she was like, they didn't want a woman to win it, so they put
That's
as
it.
many boundaries in the way as they could. But
Yeah.
things have changed a lot since then. Amelia Hartford did very well last year, I think, Ryan.
Wow.
Yeah. Lonnie Unser has done very
Lonnie
well.
Unser.
The last
Yeah, the
few
Unsers.
years.
So
Yeah.
what are the cars they're using? I mean, I'm thinking back to the days where Monster Tajima used to do it in a ridiculous Suzuki with like 1,000 horsepower, and that Peugeot they made for Sebastian Loeb to drive up the hill.
Yeah.
Are they one-off designs? They're one-off builds these days?
It's, I think, the most diverse group of cars you'll ever see at a single event, because there is homebrew stuff. That's like the most amazing part about Pikes Peak, right? It's families. It's fathers and sons and grandfathers and granddaughters and things, and they're running stuff they've built literally in their barn. And then you mentioned Hyundai and these factory teams where they're all in the matching outfits, and they're fielding 8 cars or whatever, and the EVs are a big part of it now. But you have pickup trucks from the 1950s with 900 horsepower and a big stack sticking out of the front hood, right? And the next car is a 240 SX, right? That's struggling to at the higher altitude. So it's a mix. I think as far as what's been winning recently, it's a lot of EV stuff, right? I mean, Ford very famously ran that bread van thing a couple of years ago. And
I've been in that.
Have you really?
Oh my God! The what do they call that? It looks
Is that
like
with Dumas? With Roman Dumas?
No, I was in it with Manfred Stoll, and we did a stage of the Catalonia rally in Spain. So we went through before the rally cars came through. It was the most bizarre experience. Really? It looked to me like the Scooby-Doo van, and that's what I called it.
That's a very similar profile.
It looked like the Scooby-Doo van, but I mean, what did it have? It had 1,000+ horsepower. And it made me feel quite sick, I have to say. It was a strange experience. But we were actually following Michelle, because Michelle was the safety commander on the stage, and we were following her through the stage. And she did stop us at one point and say, "You just need to be a bit careful with this thing." And Manfred, who's a fabulous driver, he just let her get 7 or 8 corners in front, and then we floored it, and it was bonkers, absolutely bonkers.
Wow.
A kind of experience that you get out of and go, yeah, did I enjoy that? I don't care, because it was a hell of an experience.
You've had a few interesting experiences with professional drivers in cars, haven't you? Can you talk about any of them?
Yeah. Look, I'm I was in the Disney park here today, and my favorite ride was the. I can't remember what it's called, but it was in the kids part of Magic Kingdom, because it was a really gentle roller coaster. I'm not going on anything else. I'm the world's biggest coward. The world's biggest coward. But yeah, I had a crash a few years ago in a car with a guy in Australia called Brendan Reeves, and it was odd because I knew we were going to crash, and had a really uneasy feeling about this. And Brendan had been on to me all week about going with him. And he's a fabulous driver, one of the best drivers in Australia. And this section of road we were on, he'd driven it 8 or 9 times that morning without any problems. And we got in the car, and there's a video of me saying, I shouldn't be doing this. I've always said I'll never get into a little car again. And then 5 minutes later, we're up in the air at 90 miles an hour, spinning around, having smashed into a bank. And we got back, and my cameraman producer, I said to him, look, I knew we were going to crash. And he went, yeah, so did I. He said, I had the feeling as you drove off. he told me, and we could have had a little discussion, and we couldn't. But no, I've had a few like that where it's all been a little bit entertaining. But any of those things, whenever you get into a car with a professional driver, whatever type of car it is, you understand what they do, and it gives you such a better understanding. Particularly if like me, you're paid to commentate and you're paid to understand what's going on. The best way to understand is to get in a car. And I'm not suggesting the best way to understand is to have a crash. Maybe not ideal, but no, I've been lucky over the years. I've been in some cars with some of the world's best drivers, and I wouldn't say I've enjoyed every minute of it, because I am a coward, but I've appreciated every minute of it.
Yeah. I read somewhere, Colin, that you say that you have the best job in the world, and I tend to believe that. But how did this all start? I mean, for you, go way back. What's your path?
I am fortunate, Ryan, in that I have seen the other side. I did work in corporate life for 12 years, working for a tobacco company. I worked in marketing, then I worked in promotion. I moved from brand marketing for a tobacco company into promotion. And we, as part of our promotion portfolio, we were involved in sponsorship. And we sponsored, for example, it was at the time where we had our own Formula One team. So it was the BAR Formula One team. And remember, we had that ridiculous car with the split livery that was zipped up the middle with the 555. Yeah, it was at that time, so the 90s. 555 one side and Lucky Strike on the other side. So we as a company, we had our own Formula One team. I don't think this is protected information. I think it's well known. But in the first 3 years of that project, we spent $1 billion. $1 billion. And achieved nothing. Absolutely nothing. So basically what happened was the boss, the big boss of BAT, the big marketing director, there's a guy called David Richards. Have you come across David, Ryan? David Richards runs a company. He runs a company called ProDrive.
Sure. You know the company. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and he's also been involved in Formula One. So our boss wanted David Richards to come and run his Formula One team because even by tobacco standards, $1 billion in 3 years with no results is a little difficult.
It's a lot of cigarettes, yeah.
It's a lot of cigarettes to sell. So David Richards, who had the Subaru World Rally team at the time, he said, yeah, I'll quite happily come and run your Formula One team. And he took the whole of the rally team, so the sporting director, the marketing director, the sales director, the engineers, took them all, moved them to Banbury, which is where the Formula One team was based, and went out to dinner with Rimaszewski, the head of BAT. And Rimaszewski's, quite a big bluff bloke. He scared a lot of people. And he asked David whether everything was okay, and David said, yeah, fine, we're all set to go. Formula One team, all the people are in place. He said, but we've got a small problem with the rally team. And apparently Rimaszewski turned around and said, what's rally? What's a rally team? Knew very little about it. David said, your biggest rival is looking to, they've offered us a lot of money to sponsor. And he said, it won't look right. It won't look right if your biggest rival sponsors the rally team and I'm working for your Formula One team. And Rimaszewski said, well, how much? How much? And the story goes that Richard said, well, it's a 3-year deal and it's $5 million. And Rimaszewski just said, okay, I'll give you $15 million for the 3 years. And Richards meant $5 million over 3 years. So basically, this happened on a Wednesday night. On the Thursday morning, I get a phone call saying we're going back on the side of the Subaru, and no one else in the company was particularly interested in rallying because we had this enormous, really sexy involvement with Formula One. So I'm told that it was very late in December. We're going back on the side of the Subaru. And we're launching in Monte Carlo in a few weeks' time. And at the time I had an interest in all motorsports, but not a particular passion for rallying. But I went to Monte Carlo, set it all up. We got going with internal kind of launch and then the external launch. And I turned up, and my first morning was in a helicopter at Monte Carlo. I've never been in a helicopter in my life. And as I've already said, I'm a complete coward. And we're bumping our way up the Col de Turin, and I'm thinking, I want out. This isn't fun, I really want out. And there's a little Irish guy next to me. And he's going, you'll be all right. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. A little old Irishman. So you'll be absolutely fine. He says, it's your first time. I said, first time in a helicopter, first time at a rally. And he starts telling me all about the rally and starts telling me a lot about the Monte Carlo rally, about the cars. And we get down to the stage. We park as you do with a helicopter, parked at the side of the stage. And he's talking me through the cars. He's going, just watch the line of this car. And I turned around to him and I eventually went, you seem to know an awful lot about this. And he went, yeah. He said, I won this event in 1964 in the Mini. And it was the legendary Paddy Hopkirk. And I'd been sitting next to him for an hour discussing, he'd been educating me. So I spent my first morning rallying with Paddy Hopkirk. Oh, wow. And it was just the best way. It was the best introduction. And at that point, it was like, I think I could quite enjoy this sport. And and we went about a year. Then the UK government banned tobacco sponsorship, so I left, took my redundancy, and then started missing rallying after about a year of being redundant. And I set up a website selling motorsport ringtones. You boys are probably just about old enough to remember ringtones.
Sure.
And people were making a lot of money from ringtones, and I was going to become a ringtone millionaire.
I love it.
I had this brilliant idea. It was speedtones.com. Right, so if you were a fan of Peter Solberg, if you were a fan of Jacques Villeneuve, you could have the sound of his car as your ringtone. What could go wrong? Brilliant idea, instant millionaire. It didn't quite work out like that, but I needed to record some sounds. So I went to a rally, and a friend of mine said, "Well, borrow some equipment from the guy who does the radio. He's got some really good sound equipment." So I went to speak to him, and he said, "Yeah, you can borrow my equipment, but you've got to do me a favor. We're short of staff this weekend, so I want you to help me out and do some interviews." And I thought, I can do this. Yeah, why not? I need his equipment, so I'll just say yes to it. And I tell you what, I remember it was actually Cyprus, and I stood at the end of the first stage, and I've never known anything like it. It was so totally intoxicating. I'd been around rallying for a while, but in a slightly more rarefied sort of atmosphere as a sponsor, and just seeing the damage to the cars, sensing and smelling the emotions and the fear at the stage end from the drivers. And at that point, I thought, nah, speed tones can be someone else's $1 million problem. I'm off to do radio, and that's how I got involved. It's a very long story.
That's fantastic.
But that's how I got involved. That's how I got involved in rallying. That was 25, 26 years ago, and I've been very, very lucky in that every year since then, someone has wanted to pay me to work in rallying. So yeah, it was a very fortuitous way in, I have to say. But yeah, and I must have been good at something because I'm still here.
Absolutely. So few people get to do something they love, right? We seem to have a lot of them on the show, which is cool, but most people just, that's so special.
It is special, and when your job doesn't feel like a job, it's special.
Yeah.
But when you can really appreciate it as well. And I'm not saying that not everyone who has jobs like mine appreciate them, but I did work in corporate life for 12 years, 15 years. So to come from a job which you do, a lot of us are kind of prostitutes to our work, aren't we?
Yeah.
We don't love it necessarily, but we do it because it pays well, or whatever it might be. It's convenient, whatever it might be. But to actually be in a position, I grew up wanting to be a golfer. I grew up wanting to play, the Open Championship at St Andrews. But I get that feeling every week, every time I go to a rally now. I get that. I'm in a position where I'm part of what I think is the greatest motorsport in the world, and I'm privileged to be able to talk to the drivers, to talk to the fans, the team bosses, and it's like that. It's like playing in the Open or the Masters every time I go to a rally. I get that kind of buzz. It's wonderful.
That's so cool.
It's very, very cool. I can't remember who said it, but someone said travel broadens the mind. And with the World Rally, which obviously you cover, 1 week you'll be in the coldest part of Sweden. The next week you'll be, obviously on vacation in Florida, but the week after you'll be in Africa covering. Yeah. So you get to travel the world. We have a lot of fans in Peru. Are there any rallies near Peru that you've been to?
Yes, funnily enough, Dan, there are. Yeah, there's well, the Dakar went to Peru, didn't it?
Yes.
But we go to Paraguay and we go to Chile. So wow. I don't think that's too far from Peru. And then we used to go to Mexico, so that's a bit north of Peru, I guess, sure. Isn't it? Yeah. But no, we do go and rallying in South America is really, really popular. They've got a really strong rallying community out there, and the level of rallying in South America, particularly in places like Paraguay and Chile and Argentina, obviously, is really, really high, really high.
Our timing is perfect having you on.
Yeah. So let's do a quick shout out to everyone in Peru, because we are number one in the automotive podcast in Peru. So we're not quite there for the US yet, but I believe that Peru is always a leading edge listening group. So it's only a matter of time, right?
Absolutely.
You're getting there.
Yeah. Thank you.
What's your favorite rally to cover around the world, and why?
Do you know, that's a really difficult one, because I genuinely do enjoy them all. and I enjoy going along. I enjoy the diversity in rallying, and it's, it is so diverse. It's quite difficult to pick a favourite. But there was a time where I could never tell you what my favourite was, but I could always tell you which one I would miss, which my least favourite was, and that was Rally GB, my home rally. I hated it for so many years. So many years. I really disliked going to Rally GB. Not because of the quality of the rallying, because the stages were magnificent, but purely because of the people that ran the rally. It's like anything. The culture that the organisers create quite often is how the rally is perceived. And GB used to be a horrible one for me, really horrible. Just disliked it, really disliked going. But if you said, where do I like going? I love going to Australia. I do quite a lot of work in Australia. And sadly, there's no round of the World Rally Championship in Australia just now. But I cover the Targa series. Dan, I'd love to see you down there for Targa one year. I tell you, we should try and do something where there's a wonderful experience, the Targa Tour. 5 days, thousands and thousands of kilometres. Oh, my goodness, it's great fun. But, I love those events. More and more as I'm getting a little bit older and I'm getting a little tired of the politics of say, the World Rally Championship, I kind of find myself gravitating towards more local events. I do an event in South Australia called the Heartland Rally. It's a blind rally, so no pace notes, just route notes, which is quite a skill in itself to be able to, and it requires a lot of commitment. But that's 550 Ks over 2 days of just in the Australian outback, and it's astonishing. Just a great community. It's a great leveler. You're sitting around the campsite in the evening, and the bloke across there's just sold his business for $1.5 billion. The guy next to you works for $10 an hour, and they're all sitting having a beer and a chat and talking about shared experiences. And I love that. I love getting back to the grassroots of rallying, the basics, and it just reminds me what's great about the sport. Politics gets in the way of any sport, and I find that more and more over the years at the very highest level, politics has been a real hindrance to the World Rally Championship. But as I say, I think things are changing and moving on. But yeah, in terms of my favourites, if I had to name one, no, I couldn't. Sorry. But probably one of the ones down in Australia and New Zealand. The Otago. Let's say the Otago Rally. Let's say the Otago in New Zealand. I absolutely blooming love that event. It is just a special event with special people and special cars. Mark II Escorts. If you're a fan of the Mark II Escort, the Otago Rally in New Zealand, you'll see 40 or 50 of the best Mark II rallying escorts you'll find anywhere. Wow. It's astonishing. There we go.
Well, let's talk about the cars a little bit, if we could. How have they changed in the 25 years that you've been at this?
Yeah. Look, we've seen various different manufacturers come and go from the sport over the years, and particularly in the 20-odd years I've been involved, 25 years. But the DNA of rallying was what I talked about earlier on. The fact that these cars were always based on the chassis of the road car. So even at the highest level, our World Rally cars, they were all registered. The Focuses, the Volkswagens, they were all road-going car chassis that were then turned into these incredible, machines on the stages. That's changed over the past 3 or 4 years. At the top level, it's now space frame based. For the purists, that's a problem. It's not such a problem for me because these cars still look like the road-going versions. But we've been slightly held back, I think, by when we had the chassis. It was certain segments within the motoring industry. So we were talking about Volkswagen Polos, we were talking about Ford Fiestas, we were talking Citroen DS3s. These are small cars and very specific to certain markets. With space frame, the manufacturers can put whatever they like on it. If you want to put a Ram 500 into a World Rally car, you can do it, right? You can do it. It'll look blooming strange. The aerodynamics might not be great, but you can do it. You can do it. So the biggest change has been this shift towards at the top level space frame chassis, and that's been a bit of an issue for the absolute purists. But as I say, for me, it's not an issue. What we have to do is we have to be as appealing as we can, and that's in terms of the segments that we're allowed to rally, and in terms of the for a while we were heading, as a lot of motorsport was, headlong towards electric, and then it was like, this really isn't something that's achievable in the near future. So the new regulations they brought out, they cover just about any type of engine. It can be electric, it can be hybrid, it can be diesel. In the first year, it'll be the first few years, it'll be a standard ICE petrol engine. But the regulations will allow for the manufacturers to say, this is where we're going, and this is how we would like to prove our cars in rallying. And if it is electric, well, they can come along, and the regulations will allow that. So it's becoming a lot more inclusive in terms of the type of cars that are involved. And we've learned that from Dakar. Dakar basically said, whoever wants to come, you bring what you want, and we'll find the equilibrium in terms of the sporting side of it. And they did it very well in Dakar, and I think they can do it very well in rally.
Yeah.
Because they had Octa debut this year for Dakar, didn't it? The Land Rover Octa, the Defender Octa.
What was that? Yeah.
It was a factory team from Land Rover, and I think they did pretty well.
Yeah. No, they did okay. Sarah Price was driving for them. What a fantastic example of the system in America. She is. She's done a great job. She's working her way through the ranks and proving herself. She's a hugely talented girl, really enormously talented. I saw her winning her first stage at Dakar, and I think she was only the second or third woman to win a stage not outright, in her class at Dakar. And when someone does that, you sit up and take notice. Sarah's a very talented girl. But Land Rover. But we go back a few years at Dakar, and we had Audi with their supposed electric vehicle that wasn't electric. It had 4 DTM engines, basically powering providing power to the electric motors. But Audi wanted to run Dakar as a marketing and, I guess, an engineering experiment, and the Dakar organisers said, bring it in, and we'll find a way of not so much balance of performance, but or equalisation of technology, but we'll find a way of making it all fair, and it worked.
Yeah. You talked a bit about the cars going to space frame and this kind of thing. Something Dan and I have talked about is the cars being based on the cars that, you knew growing up. And we didn't have that here in the States, right? A lot of these cars were foreign to us, right? So I think that's changed. I think every 10th car here in Colorado anymore is a WRX, right?
Is that right?
But it probably isn't. It's probably a Forester, but there are a lot of them, right? I feel like that as sort of a climate has changed where we now know the cars, right? We now know the cars. But Dan talks about what was the car you lusted after as a kid? Was it I think we had it was the Mercure, but it was the
old Sierra Cosworth and
the Sierra Cosworth, and it just we just didn't we just grew up with different stuff too,
But that's so important though, isn't it? And I guess that could be part of the reason, a good part of the reason why maybe rallying hasn't quite as yet taken off in the States. There has to be something that's recognizable and desirable there, doesn't it? We were running the Fiestas for years, and did you ever have the Fiestas in the States?
We did. I don't think it was the same car. We had a little 3-cylinder in the 90s, right, which was kind of the bottom barrel, tiny little thing. I don't think we ever really had the good Fiestas. But until recently, until with the SD and all that.
So there's rumors that next year there may be a WRC round in the US. Do you think that's going to happen?
Yeah, look, it's enormously important. I mean, how can you have a top-level worldwide competition without the US?
Well, unless it's baseball or American football. I was watching the Seahawks won the Super Bowl the other week, and there was a bus that went through the center of Seattle. And sorry, I'll come back in a minute, but this is important to me because the front of this bus had Seattle Seahawks, world champions. They'd won the Super Bowl, but no other country was allowed to enter.
Yeah.
But going back to your point, sorry, Colin.
But that's an interesting concept, isn't it? How you can be world champions. An interesting concept, for another day, a debate for another day. I can't remember what I was saying now, Dan.
No, we were talking about whether it comes to Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Chattanooga. Yeah, look, last time we were in the States was the Olympus Rally, and that was, 30 years ago? I don't know. It was a long, long time ago. and we were never in the States on a regular basis. It's a project that's been ongoing for many, many years. And I love rallying in America, but there are issues. There are issues with, obviously, the geography. You run a championship in Britain, and the most you're going to have to do is drive 500 miles to get to an event. You've got guys that are driving 3,500 miles across America from one event to the other. The level of rallying and the championship in the States, it's taken a little while to build it and to build it up to a level that could then perhaps translate into a round of the World Rally Championship. But there have been some really big efforts from some very talented people to find the right place to rally in the States. That's another big issue. To find the team to put the rally on, maybe even a bigger issue. And then to find a way to sell that to Americans. And it's looking really positive. There's a really strong team that have been put together by, crumbs, I forget the guy's name. You might know his name, Dan. The guy who's heading up the whole thing.
Is Lance involved with it?
Lance involved, but not Lance. No, it's a guy who's got a tremendous background in promotion and sports promotion, not of motorsports, of other, and which I think is great. I think part of the problem with rallying is we've had too many people. Yeah, we need people with outside ideas. But yeah, Chattanooga is looking good for the base for the rally. There is what they call a candidate event, so a test event, if you like, taking place in June this year. And fingers crossed, they'll confirm that the US will be back on the calendar of the WRC next year. And that'll be the first time in 30 plus years. And it'll be exciting just to see, how well it's received. And then what the legacy is. There needs to be a legacy. And the legacy for me has to be rallying in America and the growth and the strength of the American Rally Championship. And I'm hoping that a lot of positives come out of the WRC coming to America. But we have to be there. Goodness me, we've got Hyundai, or however you guys say it. I say it differently from most other Scots people, so I don't know how you pronounce Hyundai. But you've got Hyundai big in the US. Ford, obviously enormous. We've got other manufacturers looking to come into the championship. If we've got around in America, it really does strengthen that proposition for them as well. So it's so important that we come to America, and it's so important that when we do come to America, we get it right and we do it properly. I'm excited. I'm excited already by it.
Absolutely. So, Colin, you're an American like me.
You're coming.
You're showing up.
Brian, sorry, mate. You're coming.
I would love to.
You're number one on my VIP list. You're coming.
That has never happened to me in my life, so I will be there. I appreciate that. So, what am I looking for when I come? What am I watching out for? What do I need to know? Break it down for me.
Okay. So, number one, it's fun and it's an adventure. So, for me, there's a tremendous movement in young people away from this data kind of electronic, they want to find something they can get into that doesn't involve them sitting on their phones all day or whatever. And rallying is a great opportunity for like-minded people to get out into the countryside, to discover. I've discovered some of the most beautiful places in Scotland, where I come from, through rallying. It's an opportunity for folk who are in that area to go out and to find parts of the countryside that perhaps they didn't even know existed. And then to get yourself in a position where you can actually sit and appreciate on roads that you'd look at and go, I'm not even sure I want to drive that road. To watch cars coming down those roads at 100, 110 mile an hour is the biggest thrill. And part of the fun, it's a 3-day event, might even be a 3.5-day event. It's about getting out. It's about, getting the maps, getting hold of maps, not Google Maps, but getting hold of proper maps and planning your route, planning your weekend, planning who you want to see, and getting out there and making a week of it and just enjoying the absolute adventure. And here's the great thing. You get to the service park, wherever that might be, and they're not going to keep you 50 feet, 100 feet, 200 feet from the cars and the drivers. You will practically be able to touch the mechanics as they're servicing the cars. You will walk through the service park with the greatest drivers in the world walking through. It is such a real sport. There's nothing... there's nothing pretentious or poncy or stuck up about rallying. It's a proper sport. And then at the end of the evening, you can go and hopefully watch them going around the streets of Chattanooga and have a few beers or a glass of wine. Does it get any better? I'm not sure it does get any better than that.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it does. And just as a public service announcement, if you do go to one of these rallies, please don't touch any of the mechanics. They don't like it.
That's not what I hear, Dan. Some of them are planning to do, but that's a different story for another day. That's another podcast.
You're a bit of a celebrity in the paddocks, though, Cole. So, maybe they treat it differently when you touch them.
Wow. Yeah, no, but it's a great event. But if you do go along, and I think there'll be a lot of rally newbies going along, and it is really, really important just to familiarize yourself with the safety issues, because you'll go to places where there are no fences, there are no paddocks, you will be on your own. You'll be free spectating. How great is that? Free spectating. But you need to be careful. It can be a dangerous sport. Cars can do very, very unpredictable things. So, I would just ask that anyone going along just familiarizes themselves with the basics. Never stand on the outside of a corner. They'll never, ever stand on the outside of a corner, because if a car is going to go off, that's where it's going to hit you. Just be aware if it's gravel, which it will be, rocks. I've been hit in the head, taking what I think are the greatest photographs. And then bang, you get hit in the middle of the head by a rock. It tends to ruin your day. So things like that, just go along and spectate, have fun, treat it as the adventure that it is. But obviously, number one is the safety side of things. We need to make sure that everyone is spectating safely, and I'm sure they will.
Yeah, and there's usually folks with vests on, so if in doubt, ask. There's nothing to be lost by asking.
Absolutely right.
Those folks,
and there'll be plenty. Yeah, there'll be plenty, I'm sure, beforehand, in terms of there'll be plenty of little bits and pieces on Instagram and Facebook and all the digital outlets, just explaining to people what to do, what not to do, where to go. But that's the great thing. They'll tell you where you should go, and the great thing is you can choose to go there. Or you can maybe just go where you want, as long as you do it safely.
Right.
It's great.
That's good. Lots of iconic drivers over the last 20-odd years. Any favourite drivers, whether that's because of their talent or just the rapport that you've built with them?
Yeah, my absolute favourite driver is Sébastien Ogier, without a doubt. He is one of those guys, he's an absolute, when it comes to world greatness, this guy is, I think, one of the greatest drivers we've ever seen. I would argue he's the greatest rally driver that we've ever seen. He's won 9 titles. Loeb's won 9 titles. Others, you might argue, won fewer titles but were more talented. But Loeb won all of his rallies, bar one, with Citroën. Won all of his titles with Citroën. Citroën built a car for him every year, and he won. And I'm not taking anything away from Loeb's achievements. They were quite remarkable. Utter domination during the noughties. But then Ogier came along and he drove a Volkswagen, won his first title with Volkswagen. The FIA didn't like the absolute domination that he was asserting over everyone. So they changed the rules to try and stop him winning. They changed the rules to try and stop Ogier winning. And all it did was make him more determined. And he still won. He still won when they changed the rules to try and stop him. He went to M Sport, the absolute underdogs in the paddock. And he shook them by the scruff of the neck. And he took them to the first manufacturer's title, won driver's titles with M Sport. Really? Went back to Citroën, had a bit of a torrid time there, but went to Toyota, won a title or 2, I think, with one title with Toyota. Might have been 2, I can't remember. Then he retired, came back part-time last year and won the championship as a part-time driver.
Wow.
I mean, and on top of that, he was never, for me, he reminds me a lot. I said earlier I was a golfer. He reminded me of a lot of, when he was focused, his focus was purely on driving and winning. And the kind of fallout from that is that occasionally he'll say something, he'll do something that's taken badly. It's perceived as being arrogant or rude or whatever. It's not. It is the sign of champions. It's the focus of the world's very best. And I saw it when I was younger with Seve Ballesteros, the greatest golfer that ever walked this earth. And I was at the Open in 1983, 13 years old, the Open Championship in St Andrews, with my little brother, big brother at the time. And we were camping, 13 and 14 years old, at St Andrews, getting all these autographs. We had the program, we're getting the autographs. Ballesteros, we followed him during the practice. We followed him all day, trying to get his autograph. And he, in his Spanish, said, no. End of the round, back of the clubhouse. I will, and dismissed everyone. So, me and our little army of little friends that I'd made all went to the back of the clubhouse. Who walks out first? Arnold Palmer. Oh. Arnold Palmer walks out the back of the clubhouse on the 18th Green at St Andrews. And he spent 45 minutes signing autographs, talking to all the kids. Seve appears, having promised all these kids he was going to sign the autographs, jumped in his car and drove off. And at the time, I thought, what a, at 13 years old, I thought, what a nasty piece of work.
Yeah.
Who won the Open that year? Ballesteros. Who's the greatest golfer that ever walked this earth? Ballesteros. The nicest golfer that ever walked this earth? Quite possibly Ballesteros. But in that moment, he was a tosser. He really was. But because we didn't understand, we don't walk in the footsteps or the shoes of these people. We don't understand what it takes to be a world champion. It was the same with Sébastien Ogier. People criticised him because he seemed as if he was rude, as if he was arrogant, as if some of the things he did were unsporting. No, all of that made him what he was and what he is. An absolute ruthless world champion. And those of us who haven't been world champions, can't criticise that sort of behaviour. Because that's what it takes for a kid who didn't come from money, from a kid who didn't come from privilege, from a kid who had to win every step of the way. One loss, and he wasn't going to be world champion. He had to win. You just can't imagine what that takes. And what that takes is, I guess, is a single-mindedness. So I've always loved them. I've always absolutely loved them. And one of the stories that I tell when it's not. I don't have to defend him, and I don't defend him, because he doesn't need defending. He his record kind of speaks for itself. But we were in Mexico. So the winner of Rally Mexico gets a pair of cowboy boots, supposedly handmade cowboy boots, and it was the Sunday of Rally Mexico, and unusually, it started at the Super Special, which was just outside Leon. And there was no one there. There was absolutely no one there. And the drivers turned up early, and I was doing radio. And I was chatting away to them, and there was Chris Meek, there was one or two others. And Ogier was there. And we were chatting, and he was leading by about 2 minutes. And I said, Seb, this will be your 5th pair of cowboy boots. And he went, he said, my wife won't let me bring them home because they smell. He said, I've got these 4 pairs that I've never worn sitting in the cupboard at home, and the smell of this new leather is doing her head in. They absolutely smell. I said, well, I'll tell you what, Seb. I said, I've got a pair I'd bought the year before for about $30. I'd bought a pair of pink patent leather cowboy boots in Leon, which I wore twice because you can't wear them in where I live in the Midlands of England. I wore them twice. I loved them, and I owned them for a couple of occasions. I said, Seb, I've got this pair of pink cowboy boots. I tell you what, they don't smell. If you win today, I'll swap them with you. Forgot all about it. 2 rallies later, we're in Sardinia, and I'd gone into the Volkswagen hospitality area for dinner, and the drivers are there and the team are there, and you leave the drivers alone in the evening. You tend not to go near them. You just leave them alone. And he's beckoning me across, and I'm going, oh, what have I said? What have I done today? What have I said? And I'm racking my brain because I'm doing radio at the time thinking, have I been critical? Have I said something controversial? I'm thinking, oh, God. So over I went to his table, and he gets his bag man, and he says, go and get that bag that I brought in earlier on. And he comes out with this carrier bag, and it's got the winner's cowboy boots in it. And he goes, there you are, Colin. I promised you these. You can have them.
Fantastic.
And I went, I haven't got the pink ones for you, Seb. And he went, Colin, I don't want the pink ones. You can keep those. That's the guy he is. He remembered that conversation. So I own a pair of winner's cowboy boots from Rally Mexico. Yeah. He had no need whatsoever to do that. But the sort of guy he is, he remembered. He brought them with him to a rally 2 rallies later. And I love him. I absolutely blooming love him. He's a special champion.
That's cool.
I did want to just touch on something you said around, these drivers being misunderstood and being very focused. But in your day job, you have got to get the best story out of that driver, and they may not want to talk to you. Now, obviously, over time, you build up relationships. You know who they are. They know who you are. But how do you do that when they are probably so focused on whatever the next stage is ahead, but you have to get that story?
Yeah, when I say that some of them are focused, that happens very rarely. Even although Seb was ultra focused, unless you asked him something silly, he would always give you an answer. He was very polite. He was very courteous. You had to be winding him up for him to be, a bit difficult with you. But, there's one driver, a guy called Oyt Tanak, who was a world champion in 2019, Estonian, again, the most focused and driven man, but also sometimes quite unpleasant to talk to. And you just have to persevere, Dan. You just have to persevere, and you have to understand when, there might be an occasion where you've just got to let them be. You've just got to let them be. It is quite a small community, the rallying community, and you more than anything, the drivers have to trust you. If you lose the trust of the drivers, they just won't speak to you. They just won't speak to you. If you try and stitch them up, you'll only do it once, and you'll never talk to them again. Yeah. So it is about you. It is just about I'm reasonably. Not flippant isn't the word, but I like to have a bit of a laugh. I like to have a bit of a joke. I like to talk about things that other interviewers don't talk about, and I think the majority of drivers appreciate that and they enjoy it. Most of these kids these days that are coming through are very savvy. They're very social media savvy. They're very image savvy, and they understand the value of communicating with people like me. And having a bit of a laugh and showing the sport for what it is, which is real, it's fun. Yes, it's the most challenging, the most difficult, the most one of the most dangerous forms of motorsport. But these are real kids. These are real men and women who are taking part, and they want to be seen that way. So they do appreciate it when you can be a little irreverent with them at times.
Sure.
I like that. I know how to ask the right questions at the right time. I know how to be hard. I know how to pick up on someone who is bullshitting, if you like. Yeah. And there are times where they're not telling the truth, but you let it go. You let it go. And there are times when they're not, and it's your job, it is your duty to actually find out what's going on behind the top-line answer that they're giving you. If you just accept the top-line answer all the time, then you have no integrity. As a pundit, you have no integrity as an interviewer, and I think picking that time, picking those moments to be asking the hard questions, I think the drivers appreciate that. I really do. I really do. I think they know that they're not always going to get it from me, but they know if they want to try and pull the wool over my eyes, I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to ask hard questions, and it takes a bit to build that rapport up to that situation where you can ask those questions and still have a chat and a laugh with them the next morning.
Yeah. Ryan, I don't know about you, but this sounds like a set of skills that a journalist would have.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. And it's something we see less and less of, right, in the automotive journalism world, whether you're writing about, whether you're writing car reviews or you're, covering races or whatever. It's just there's so few folks that are critical anymore, right? I feel.
I think you've got to be critical and you've got to be a little bit skeptical. If you take everything at face value, then what's the point? Yeah, what's the point? Yeah, you have to be a bit skeptical. You have to ask questions. Yeah. And if people are doing things for the right reasons, they won't mind that. They won't mind you asking questions. They won't mind you. You've got to be able to justify what you're saying, what you're doing. More team bosses than team drivers, in that regard. But if they're not doing anything naughty, if they're not doing anything bad, they ain't going to mind you asking questions. Right. But I guess too many don't. There's too many don't. I'm agreeing with what you said earlier. Too many just don't these days. It's become too sanitized.
Right, and that's it. And I'm sure that's a skill that you've honed over the 25 years, right? I'm sure that first time you went out there with that equipment you were going to use later, right? I mean, probably didn't come quite as easily.
Well, there's a bit of it in the family. My poor old granddad never lived to see me doing my current job. My dad did, thank goodness for that. He used to love coming on events with me. But my granddad was a journalist. He was a headmaster in later years, but he started off his career as a journalist. And my dad did a bit of soccer commentary and soccer writing back in the day in Dundee.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, who are you?
I'm not familiar with this sport.
Dan, I'm really sorry, Dan. I'm saying soccer just because you talked about some strange sport called football where they never use their feet. I don't get that.
No, there's a couple of things since living over here. Firstly, no one calls it football over here, and that is just highly frustrating. People don't know the plural of Lego over here, so the plural of Lego is Lego, not Legos. And finally, it's pronounced Jaguar, not Jaguar. Sorry, I'll get off my high horse at this point.
Yeah. Do you know what, Dan? You're choosing to live here, so you might have to adapt, mate. You might,
right. Tell us about soccer commentary and journalism.
No, it's there in the family a little bit. So
yeah.
So there's there was maybe some sort of DNA in me somewhere that, or maybe I'm just maybe I'm just a bit of a nosy bugger at times. I think that's probably more likely what it is.
Yeah. I think it's what you do has got to be one of the most difficult professions. Dan knows this, but I had an opportunity to commentate a race at Laguna Seca a couple of years ago. One of the historics races. Should be easy, right? Well, I get up there and it's the, what was it? The Andretti
Classic
era.
Formula One, wasn't it?
F1 cars, which I know nothing about, right? And it was the most tense and sort of stressful, 20 minutes of my life, but I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad I did it. But I don't know how someone does that, for 20, races, or does that day in and day out, because you're walking such a fine line. You have to be honest. You have to be critical. You don't want to piss anyone off, right? You don't want to make a mistake because your credibility's out the window. It is such a fine line. How do you get up and do that, every day?
Back in the day. So when I started up until, around about 8 years ago, it was radio. Radio is what I did.
Yeah.
And radio with rallying was a very particular skill. I would stand at the stage ends and interview the drivers, and we would tell the story of the evolving event with myself at the stage end and my co-host in the studio. She had all the time, she had all the information, but I had all of these incredible vistas. I had all of the drama, the views, and a lot of that was about just conveying to people back home the atmosphere. And again, not forgetting how lucky we were to be there. But I was quite good at being able to create an atmosphere. Not that you had to create it as such, but if you like, being able to convey that atmosphere at stage ends, which is very, very special.
Yeah.
If you could get, so the Indy 500, if you could get a reporter quite literally jumping on the side of that winning car as it crossed the line, as it's just beginning to slow down, and sticking a microphone under the winning driver's nose and asking him questions. That was what it was like at stage ends with every driver. They'd literally, 10 seconds before, they'd come around the corner at 120 mile an hour, putting their life on the line. They brake, they come to a stop, and I'm there waiting to interview them. Oh my God. How special is that?
Yeah, incredible.
But it wasn't difficult to tell stories. It wasn't difficult to build it up. What was difficult was trying to remember all the facts. And in the days of, everything is in my head, and you've got people saying, "Oh, you got that wrong." But that's nice and easy when you can sit in front of your computer and go and research, X, Y, and Z. But I'm having to tell the story. I'm having to, and it was about telling stories. It was about building a storytelling environment and keeping people excited. Number one, taking them to where I was, and that could be the side of a mountain in Greece overlooking a 4,000-year-old ruin. It might be on top of a stage end in Argentina overlooking the Andes. Just some of the most incredible locations. So it was about, painting pictures, telling stories, creating drama, building drama into what's going on with limited information. And then getting the best out of the drivers at the stage ends. I absolutely loved it. And it was a great training ground for me in my efforts to be accepted as a journalist. Not that I want to be. But it was a great training ground. And it was, it was one of those things. To me, it came really easily. It came really, really easily. But we were doing the British Rally Championship. We were making a TV program for Channel 4 in the UK. And I was doing the presenting, and I was doing all the interviewing at the stage ends and all the rest. And I got food poisoning one night. We're on the Isle of Man, and they had stages on the Isle of Man that finished after midnight. And I said to our producer, And he was a wee lad. He's now really high up in Formula One. One of the most talented, really one of the most talented kids I'd ever met. He was 21 years old at the time. Most talented kid. I said to him, mate, I can't come out tonight. I honestly don't trust myself walking out the front door. Yeah. It was that bad. And that was the one and only time that I've ever missed it. And he went, oh, don't worry, Cole. Full of confidence of youth. I'll go and do the interviews. I'll go and speak to the drivers. So I made it down to breakfast the next morning, and I was with the cameraman, and the cameraman he said, Colin, don't you ever be ill again. He said he absolutely wrapped himself. He just couldn't do it. This was the most talented kid I've ever met. But when it came to, and it's a sport that he was immersed in, when it came to asking questions, he just couldn't do it. He just couldn't do it. So some of us have the ability to put people at ease, ask the right question at the right time. One of the things I never, ever, ever did at a stop line, and you might be interviewing, I don't know, same drivers, but you might be doing 120, 150 interviews a day, as in your stop line interviews. They're only 1 minute each. For me, if I was asking, how was it? How was the stage then? I'm not, you can, any monkey can ask that. Any monkey, any recording. But, he couldn't get beyond that. He couldn't get beyond that, this poor lad. And a lot of people who look at what we do at stage ends, what we do around rallies, think, oh, that must be easy. It's not so easy. I think it's easy. I honestly think it's easy. But I know when other people have tried that, to really to just encapsulate the locations, the atmosphere, the adrenaline, the jeopardy, all of those things, and to convey that in a way that people will sit back home at home and listen on a radio, for example. It takes, I guess, a little bit of skill.
That's a great answer, and it's something I think about, in print or web journalism or whatever you want to call it, kind of the death of long form writing, right? Because that storytelling is harder and harder to do, right?
And do you know what, Ryan? It's all about storytelling. And this is where we're missing out on rallying just now. Rallying gives more stories than just about any other form of motorsport. And we have stories all around rallying, the characters, locations, the drama, the cars. We have stories at every turn. It's a Jackanory. It's a cornucopia of Jackanories. And we're failing to tell the stories, and it's criminal. It's criminal that we're failing to do it in rallying. But storytelling is everywhere, and you're right. The art of storytelling, it's a dying art. What a shame! What a real shame.
Well, and to be able to do it on the fly like you can, I mean, that's a gift, right? I think that's just something you may be born with, right? That gift.
Well, maybe. But I never. Do you know that first one I told you about, that first event I went to?
How'd that go?
Strangely, I lacked confidence speaking, even although I'd been working in a reasonably high profile job in marketing. High profile, it wasn't high profile, but it was a good job in marketing. I actually took my little brother along to that event. Well, he was there. He was there with me when we were getting the recordings, but he'd done a whole load of. My little brother's a natural performer. He works in the Alps, and he'd done karaoke and all sorts of stuff.
Oh, wow.
He had no problems talking to people and talking to crowds. And I said to him before the first car came in, first car was Toshiara, a Japanese driver. And literally, Toshiara was 2 minutes away. And I said, Simon, if I can't do this, I am going to hand you this microphone and you will do it. And that's how uncertain I was of whether I could do it. I actually had him prepared, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I can do it, no problems." And he stood there with a face like thunder, as I got more and more into it with this first stage. But yeah, I was very uncertain about whether it was something I could do, and I was just. I was lucky, Ryan. So, it is luck. People say, "How did you get there?" Luck, absolute luck. Right place, right time. And then there was a bit of talent there that allowed me to develop what I do. So,
no, don't dismiss that part of it. Huh?
I can't tell my son who wants to do it. I can't tell him how to do it. I mean, there's no assured way of doing it.
Yeah. Well, in your busy schedule, you still enjoy getting out for a drive?
Yeah, look. I love driving, but I'm not a Dan Pilling when it comes to driving. I don't have that sort of skill and talent and commitment. I've seen some of Dan's driving. He's a good driver. I love driving. I do love a road trip. Yeah. But I'm So, when I ski, which I do rarely, I went skiing for the first time in a long, long time. Again, with my little brother, lives in the mountains. Great skier, fabulous skier, and absolutely no fear whatsoever. Chucks himself off mountains. And he said that as I went down, he said, Colin, you can tell you've not skied for a long time because you look like Lady Di when you're skiing down there. And that's what I like. I like that nice kind of controlled, legs together, nice.
I know the
control.
picture. That's the funny part. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So it was that real control.
Yeah,
and that's exactly the same when I drive. I just like, I like taking lines. I like, the occasional little squirt of power. But I like to be in control and to be neat and to be tidy. It scares the crap out of me when I start driving fast. I scare myself. I once had a 964 911, which I bought when I retired from the tobacco company with the massive payment that they gave me. I wanted to buy. I tell you what, I wanted to buy. I wanted to buy an Alfa Romeo GTV Cup car. There were only 500 of them made. A beautiful thing, 3.2 litre, beautiful thing. And we went to look at one, and Dad said to me, Cole, it's a great car. You'll have a lot of fun if it's on the road. A lot of time it'll be in the garage, being fixed. He said, and in a year or two's time, it'll be worth half of what you pay for it. And he said, go and get a Porsche. And it was one of the best bits of advice he ever gave to me. So I thought, never thought about a Porsche, but a 964 911. And it was the best thing I have ever owned. I could drive it to the shops. I could drive it around town. If it was a straight line, it went like a rocket ship. I'm told it handled quite well, but I was never brave enough to throw it into corners. But I loved it. I loved the fact it was powerful, but it was poised, and it was a beautiful car to drive. But no, I'm not one that gets my kicks from tire squealing and the back end stepping out. It scares me.
We've done 1 hour and 10 minutes without saying the P word. We were doing so well. So a regular theme on this show is that we're always talking about Porsches. So we had done so well up until this point.
A long time ago, Dan, and when my kids are finished at school, maybe I'll treat myself to another one at some point.
Yeah. They're just so good. What can you say? Look,
but the thing is, Ryan, I'm again one of those people that over the years, cars have cost me a lot of money. I spend a lot of money on them.
Sure.
And then sell them for a lot less or, give them away. One of only 2 cars that I've ever owned that I've sold for more than I bought it for.
Really? Yeah.
So I paid £21,000 for that car and sold it 18 months later for 23,000. I think if I still owned it, it would be about 70 or 80,000 pounds.
That's the truth. Thank you, Singer. Yeah, it's
yeah. So but the other one, interestingly, was my second favorite brand.
Yeah,
a Saab 95 convertible. Paid 800 quid for it. Sold it for 850 quid.
Awesome.
Can't go wrong.
I miss Saab. I miss those interesting cars,
I loved it. It had a button. Yeah. It had a night mode button on it.
That's right.
Where you press the button and everything went dark apart from the speedo.
That's right.
So the
Born
speedo
of
in the
Jets,
middle,
right? It was
from the Jets. Exactly that.
Yeah.
It's great. I never treated the night mode as it should be treated.
Bring back the Saab for sure.
Yeah.
What's next for you, Carl? What are you up to next?
Off to Kenya in a few weeks, and then it gets busy. We go down to Otago in New Zealand and the Heartland Rally in South Australia. It just gets busy. But it gets busy. I'd like to slow down a wee bit, but it's I mean, it's not like I'm going in to do a proper job every day. But it's a busy old time this time of year.
Yeah.
But Kenya, I love. We go and we rally amongst the giraffes and the baboons and the lions and the tigers. Or is it lions or tigers? We don't do lions and tigers. Someone like Dan will know. What is it? What is it we have in Africa? Dan, is it lions? It's lions,
isn't it?
It's
lions. Yeah, I think tigers are other places like India and stuff, aren't they?
That's it. Yeah, no, and it's the most remarkable thing. I absolutely love. Cool. I love going to Kenya. Cool. So that's next on the agenda.
Fun. Sounds fun.
Yeah, it is always.
Cool. If people want to follow your adventures, what is the best way to do so? Well,
Dirtfish is is a US company I work for. We're probably the world's #1 rallying media. We're there on Instagram, on YouTube, TikTok even. I don't really know what TikTok is. The kids do. Apparently we've got 1 million followers on TikTok. Would you believe?
Wow.
Yeah, apparently. I don't get involved much in that, but we're there. We're on Facebook.
Isn't it? TikTok.
It's a what?
For the kids.
Yeah.
It's for the kids. TikTok.
Absolutely for the kids.
Youths.
But yeah, they can follow that, or just look me up, Colin Clark Rally, and you'll find me on all of those platforms as well. But yeah, just look up rallying, and if rallying is something that's new to you, and you're just discovering it with this talk, then goodness me, you've got a wonderful voyage of discovery in front of you, because there's so much out there to enjoy with rallying.
Yeah. No, if you go to YouTube, for example, and search for Dirtfish, you'll see multiple videos with Colin sharing interviews with drivers, sharing some of the highlights from basically the different events. So definitely do that. Check Colin's personal Instagram account out, because that's where he's got a lot of the car stuff and a lot of the photography that he does.
Right. I love taking pictures.
Any closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, just that our buddy John Deisty at Porsche Colorado Springs recently, well, I guess it was probably 6 months ago now, was at Dirtfish, and he said that was the best time he had ever had behind the wheel of a car, and that says a lot, because he's driven a lot of cool cars. So shout out to Dirtfish. And
no, that's very kind of him. And do you know what's great about Dirtfish is that we have some really good cars, but more than that, we've got some top quality instructors. They are the very, very best, and we've got, how many kilometers, Dan? You'll know. We've got many, many kilometers.
300 acres of dirt and woodland, and the guys are actually in I think they're in northern Michigan right now, teaching people to do it on the ice as well. So check out dirtfish.com for all the details.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. No, it's a great place to go to learn. Do you know what? Even for folk who don't necessarily want to become rally drivers, if you just want to understand how to drive your road car better, it's fantastically useful to have a day or two skidding around and learning about weight transfer, about braking, about apexes and cornering. It teaches you so much. Even for someone like me, it taught me a huge amount about how to get the best out of my car.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, Cole, thank you so much. We really love catching up with you.
This is great.
It's always entertaining. It's always informational. And, those are certainly signs of a true great journalist. So I'm going to officially say that you are a journalist. Yeah. And for those listening, especially my friends in Peru, thank you for listening. Until next week, this has been That Car Show. And Ryan, take us out.
Until then, always be driving. Thanks so much, Colin.
Thanks, guys, for having me.